Solomon stood on a platform much like this. And he stood before the nation. He stood before the people of God. And he prayed a prayer. An interesting prayer. It was a prayer about prayers. He prayed a prayer. An interesting prayer. Because it was a prayer about the prayers that would be prayed by the prayers in that place. He prayed a prayer. And he framed that prayer in a series of hypothetical probabilities. And so in 2 Chronicles 6, leading into 2 Chronicles 7, he frames that prayer. That's really not for him. It's for the house. It's for the nation. It's for the people of God. And he says, hypothetically, Lord, now, the people who come to this house will come with prayers on their lips. And they will come with circumstances in their lives that will need you and your power to be made manifest in their lives. And so in a series of hypothetical probabilities, he says, Lord, now, if they pray for this, then will you do this? Hypothetical probabilities. If then. And so he says, Lord, if this happens to them, then would you do this? And if they come in this set of circumstances, then would you respond by doing this? And he prays a prayer for a holy house. And I speak that prayer over you today. I declare that prayer over this house on this holy convocation. In 2 Chronicles chapter 6, verse 21, you can follow me if you will. If not, just stay with me because I got a long way to go and a short time to get there. Verse 21 says, hear the supplications of your servant. And so he's praying. And hear the supplications of your people, Israel, when they pray. You missed it. Hear the prayer that I'm praying. And I'm praying the prayer for the people when they pray. Now, they will pray, one version says, in this place. One version says, from this place. One version says, toward this place. In other words, he's saying, Lord, do something when they come into this place. Let this be holy ground. Let it be a sanctified place so that when they come into this house, if nothing else, they can connect with you. And so it ought to be a place of prayer. And Jesus walked into the temple one day and he looked at all the stuff that was going on. And he said, now I know it's my house, but my house shall be called the house of prayer. It doesn't look like my house. There's not enough prayer going on here. You've made it something else. And one version says, my house shall be called the house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves. You missed it. Jesus says, my house is my house. You may not be wondering. It's my house. And he says, since it's my house shall be called a house of prayer. You still with me? Then he says, but you have made it. Y'all missed it. He says, it's my house. And my house shall be called a house of prayer. But you have made it, one version says, a den of thieves. Now, I've seen that verse, and folk would use that, this is a true story. They would use that verse to say you shouldn't sell chicken sandwiches and fish fries in church. They said they were selling stuff. They ain't selling stuff. Oh, y'all never had no chicken in y'all's church, huh? I used to play for a church in St. Louis, and when I would go home, I smelled like chicken grease. When you walk into the church was on upstairs and the basement was downstairs, and they were serving chicken every Sunday. My sister remembered, and they have these fried chicken. And when you walked out, it was hard to think about Jesus because when you walked in, you could just smell. And them sisters could throw down too. So you wanted to get past the Our Father and get all that stuff and get on. He said, but listen, but this verse has nothing to do with selling chicken and chitlins and fried fish. Now you shouldn't be selling no chitlins and chicken and fried, but that's not this verse. He says, my house has been called a house of prayer, but you have made it, stop right there. The emphasis of the construction of that verse, but you have made it, is not on the den of thieves. You missed it. The verse says, but you've made it a den of thieves. That's not the point. The point is, the emphasis of the construction of that sentence is on the, but you have made it. I'm going too fast, y'all missed it. He says, it's my house, but you have made it. Now listen, don't focus on what's after the you have made it. Because the point Jesus makes is that you have made it. Nobody on this side got it. Let me try it again. My house should be called a house of prayer, but you have made it. It's not what you've made it. It's that you have made it, and you have made it something other than what it ought to be. It ought to be a house of prayer. It ought to be a place where folk can hook up and get a word from God. It ought to be a place where they can talk to God. It ought to be a place where you can lay your supplications upon God. It ought to be a place where you can lay your petitions before God. It ought to be a place where you can hear from heaven. It shall be called a house of prayer. Then he says this. He says, now, the people who come in this house, he says in verse 21, hear from heaven in your dwelling place. And when you hear them, verse 21 says, forgive. I'm going too fast. Watch this. He said, now the first thing about this crowd, the crowd that comes into this house will be folk who need forgiveness. Now, there's a house down the street where nobody makes a mistake. Ain't nobody ever sinned. Go down, they ain't gonna let you in, but go down the road. But for this house, some of the folk in here fell along the way, made some bad choices, went down the wrong road with the wrong person. Somebody aimed at the wrong target, missed the mark, transgressed and stepped across the line. That's the crowd that comes into here. Ain't nobody that holy up in here today. And the folk, deliver me from you folk who ain't never made mistake. Y'all ain't never done nothing wrong. That ain't my testimony. No. I was sinking deep in sin, far from the rest of the shore, very deeply stained within, sinking and rising. But the master of the faith heard my despairing cry. From the waters he lifted me. Now that's my crowd. That's my testimony. And so he says, when they come, Lord, here it is. You taking notes? Here's number one. May this be a house of forgiveness. May this be a house of forgiveness. May no one ever stop at that door because they think that what they bringing in, they ain't clean enough. No. God specializes in dirt. He's a dirt specialist. You'll fit right in up in here. Don't ever let this be a kind of place where folk come out looking so high and so holy like they never made no mistake, and therefore, that ain't my crowd. I can't. No. The door to church is open. Come on up in here, because this is a house of forgiveness. Don't you ever think that you've done something that eliminates the faith of God, the favor of God, the forgiveness of God. He says, Lord, when they come, forgive. That's my first prayer for this house. As we consecrate ourselves on this day of Holy Convocation, may this be a house of forgiveness. Don't rush past that. May it be a house of forgiveness. Let me tell you something. These last and evil days we live in, folk dig up stuff you did 10, 12, 15 years ago. And if they can't dig it up, they'll make it up. They went back and found some stuff from Kevin Hart that was a decade old. And the man said, I've changed, I've grown. No, if you can't change, you don't know God. God specializes in changing folk. Now, he's going to change me and forgive me, and you're going to hold me back to what I used to be? The devil is a lie. No, you don't ever let nobody lock you into your past. Don't ever let anybody define you by where you've been. Don't ever let anybody describe you about what you've done. No, no. God says he can wash away, and then he takes your sins and throws it as far as the east is from the west. Old folks say he put it in the sea of forgetfulness and put a sign up that said no fishing, which means they can't dig it up and you can't dig it up, because God says I put it in the sea of forgetfulness. May this be a house of forgiveness. Come on up in here, up in here. It's a house of forgiveness. Now, if God can forgive you, then you ought to forgive you. Don't let folk put you on a guilt trip about stuff that God has already cleansed it. He's already washed it. That means you're worrying about stuff that ain't there. I know it's bad English, but it's good theology. It cannot be there if he's cast it as far as the east is from the west. The enemy will trick you with a burden of unforgiveness of yourself. Listen. It's a true story. I almost committed suicide. Raise my hand to heaven. I almost committed suicide because I couldn't forgive myself. I didn't read about this. This is my story. It ain't your story. But because I couldn't forgive myself, I was suicidal. And yet God says, when he forgives, he casts our sins as far as the east is from the west. Thank you, Father. May this be a house of forgiveness. Here's number 2. May it be a house of mercy. May this be a house of mercy. He says, Lord, in verse 19, give attention to your servant's prayer and his plea for mercy. A plea for mercy. My big mama used to say, mercy suits my case. Maybe that's not what you need. I need mercy. I got grace. Praise God. I need grace too. See, because here it is. Grace is when God gives you what you don't deserve. Yeah, and it's amazing. That's amazing. It's amazing that God would give you what you know you don't deserve, and he knows, and some of the folk around you know you don't deserve. That's amazing grace. Oh, how sweet the sound. Watch this. Grace is when God gives you what you don't deserve. But he says, but when we plead for mercy, hear us. Watch this. Grace is when God gives you what you don't deserve. Mercy is when he doesn't give you what you do deserve. Y'all didn't shout on that one, did you? Have you ever shouted over what God could have done? If it had not been for the Lord on your side, have you ever shouted over what could have happened if you had gotten? By the way, let me help somebody. You don't want to go to God asking for justice. You walk with Martin Luther King for justice, but you don't want to go to God so often for justice, because that means give me what I deserve. I don't think you really want God to always give you what you deserve. No. Mercy is when he does not give you what you know you deserve. Anybody ever thought about what God could have done if he gave you what you don't deserve that job, you don't deserve that blessing, you don't deserve that favor, but because God looked beyond your faults and saw your needs and held back what you deserve, gave you what you don't deserve, and you still got a praise in your lips. Somebody ought to help me bless God in this house. Come on, y'all. Gotta go. Here it is. I pray that this will be a house of forgiveness. Lord, help me. I pray this will be a house of mercy. Here's one. I pray this will be a house of restoration. There's something in the atmosphere that God releases in this house. Verse 24 and 5 says this. There's something that God releases, and he speaks in this word. He says, when your people have been defeated by the enemy, and they've been defeated because they turned from you. When they turn their back on you and come back and give praise to your name, watch this, praying and making supplication in this house, watch this, then hear from heaven, here it is, forgive their sin, we passed that, watch this, and bring them back, you missed it, bring them back to the land that you gave them. Y'all missed it, look at me. It's a picture of the people of God who turned from God for whatever reason. And when they turned from God, the enemy came and plundered. When they took their eyes off of God, the enemy came and plundered their lives, which means this, the enemy stole from them. Now, the enemy stole land that was theirs. Y'all ain't got it. What the enemy stole, he says, God had already given to you. Let me help somebody. So he says, let this be, when they come to this house, Lord, that what the enemy stole shall be restored. There's a song said, I went to the enemy's camp and took back what he stole from me. Now let me help some of y'all right up here. Some of that stuff that he took wasn't yours in the first place. Now let me just help somebody right off and now. Let's start. That's first category. First category is it wasn't yours in the first place. Second category is some of that stuff he took, God didn't give you in the first place. Which means when you go to the enemy camp, be selective where you shout. Don't shop down this aisle, because in this aisle, that stuff, you don't want that stuff. Tell the devil he can keep some of that. Y'all ever had something look like the devil stole something and you say, Lord, you can have him. I mean, you can have that. I missed. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean them. You can have that. Y'all got a witness on this side over here. You really don't want him, do you? Come on, be spiritual, be spiritual. May this be a house of restoration. And here's what he's stolen most from some of us. He stole your joy. Let me tell you something. Give him the keys to your house, but don't let him take your joy. Give him the keys to your car. Don't let him take your joy. The joy of the Lord, that's your strength. Restore unto me the joy of salvation. This shall be a house of restoration. Some of you are going to see dreams that have been stolen, and this year God's going to bring them back. Some of you, God's going to open up some doors that you forgot you knocked on. Ooh, who was that for? I don't know who that was for. You knocked so long ago, you forgot you knocked. God's about to take you to a season where he's going to open some doors that you knocked on and forgot you knocked, and it's your time to walk right on up in there and get everything that God's ordained for you. Restoration, gotta go, gotta go, gotta go, gotta go. Here's the last thing. May this be a house of healing. Lord, help me. Because the prayer starts off with a series of hypothetical probabilities. Lord, if then, if this happens, then would you do this? If they have this situation, then would you do this? Now, when you come to chapter 7, God flips the script. I said, okay, that's the way you want to. I got an if then for you. If my people, yeah, hypothetical on that. If my people, the ones that are called by my name, if I can get my crowd, I ain't worried about the devil's crowd. No, if I can get my crowd to humble themselves, if I can get my crowd to pray, if I can get my crowd to seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then, there's the if then will I hear from heaven. Here it is. The assumption of the text is the land is sick. Let me tell you something. This land is sick. The goal ain't to make this nation great again, it's to make this nation holy again. And God says, I can fix this thing. I can handle this. Watch this. If my people call by my name, he says, then if they do something, I'll do something. Here it is. I'll heal the land. I'm ready to go. So that the reality is the land needs healing. The culture needs healing. The society needs healing. But who will be available to go into this land? Whose hands can I use? Whose feet will go to a Kenya, to a counseling center, to the young lady who's about to take the life of that child, to the young man who's about to take his own life? God's given you your hands. How often do you reach out? God's given you your mind. He's given you your gifts. There's favor over your life. Hear me today, children. Hear me, hear me. There's favor on your life. I don't care what happens in the White House. I declare it here in the prayer house. There's favor on your life. My wife and I have been here 37 years. And we went through a period, only time in 37 years, that I was ready to quit. There's been one time. We were under attack. Stuff in the media. People left the church. And I was done. I don't need this. I have preacher friends of mine who've been preaching since they were kids, and all they've ever done is preach. And many of them would say, if I don't preach, I don't have nothing else to do. That ain't my story. I can get a job. I've had jobs. I've had good paying. Oh, I can make some money. But I was done with this. I was done. I was empty. I didn't have anything stored up. It's a good thing nobody asked me this question because I didn't have the right answer. Is there any word from the Lord? No, I ain't got no word. I ain't got no word. I ain't got no word. But it's when I realized I had nothing left that I remembered that there was favor on my life. And through all the criticism and all the doubts and all the lies and all the naysayers and all those who made fun of me and those who laughed at me, I said, Lord, I'm available. If you can use anything, you can use me. Because right now, I ain't feeling like much of nothing. That's my challenge to you. God does not need your ability. You've heard this one. If he can get your availability, he can use your ability or give you the ability that you need as long as you're available. And that's the charge that I lay before you. And that's the prayer that I want to close with. Because I realize what God has given me. He's given me your hands. How often do you reach out to bless someone? He's given you your mind. How often do you use your mind to creatively bless somebody else? How often will you say, Lord, I'm available. Use me to show someone, when you gave me my hands, to point the way.